Welcome to CivilNet. We have come together to discuss the challenges and the economic opportunities of Armenia, and we are going to discuss the new McKinsey report entitled Armenia 2021-2041 Macroeconomic Diagnostic, which is not published yet. The report was commissioned by the Armenia 2041 Foundation, which has also launched the Future Armenian Initiative. Our guests are Noubar Afeyan, co-initiator of the Future Armenian, co-founder of Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity. Mr. Afeyan has founded many companies, including Flagship Pioneering and Moderna Therapeutics. Mr. Ruben Vardanyan, also a co-initiator of the Future Armenian, co-founder of Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity. Mr. Vardanyan is the founder of many other educational and business enterprises in Armenia and elsewhere. We are joined remotely from Brazil by Tigran Saakyan, partner at McKinsey Company, and Vache Gabrielyan. He's the Dean of Manoogian Simone College of Business and Economics at the American University of Armenia. Mr. Gabrielyan was Armenia's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. He will be moderating today's discussion. So, gentlemen, welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Let me start with the first question. So, when are you unveiling this strategy to the public at large and to the government in particular?
First of all, I'm very glad to be with all of you together in Armenia. Tigran, I'm from Moscow. I think you're not in Brazil, but anyway, I'm jealous about you being in Brazil. But coming back to the main key question, what you asked me, I want to say, we will see when the government will be organized and we see the new government will be appointed by a new prime minister. And by end of the summer, we'll have I think the full report ready for going public and for debate. We are planning to have in November a big conference, and we will be bringing not only this research, which was done jointly by McKinsey team and our team, but also we'll bring the other key questions and agendas, which we believe is important for discussion about our future. And this autumn, we are hoping we'll do our best to create really new platform for discussion within the government and state in general, with the private sector, with the NGOs, with the SPURC, with the diaspora, with the people who live in Artsakh, because we believe it's very critical timing for all of us. I think not only for government and for the winning party, but for entire society to really think long-term about our future, to see the destination and determine which destination we want to have and how we can go to the destination. That's why, in our view, it will be critical time for next 3-4 months to have a deep and serious discussion in all areas which we launch, including one of the most important is a social economic part.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you can start, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ruben and Noubar, I have a question about this type of reports. This is already your third endeavor in this regard. Initially, there was Armenia 2020. There was another McKinsey report in between. And how do you believe the reports that are done without government's participation are effective or not? Because they are not subscribed by the government doesn't have input when drafting them. Do you believe they, in any case, have impact because they have good argumentation and they actually turn out to dominate the discourse? Do you believe that even if they are not, they are prescient enough to actually predict what is going to happen in the future, and in this case, they are also guiding what is happening? How would you believe effectiveness of the previous efforts, and how do you expect the effectiveness of this one?
Well, also thanks for holding this session. So for the last 20 years, we've been engaged together with Ruben and many other colleagues in the development of alternative future plans for Armenia, working with private sector, public sector, professionals, just people who are interested in the topic. And what we've learned is that process is just one of the many inputs in actually trying to think about what might be the right type of destination that we should all aim at. And a report and an expert report by a consulting firm does two things. One, it brings the world's experience to the Armenian stage, which generally isn't readily available. And two, it describes potential. It does not describe how to reach that potential and how to execute. That's the role of the government, together with other constituencies, to consider which potential they would like to suggest the resources go to. So I actually think that authorship of a report of what's the potential does not require, it certainly requires facts from the government, requires as much participation, but I actually think there's some merit to first taking a look at what is the potential, what are the alternatives. The other thing I'll say, Ruben mentioned in passing, is that I've come to think of the future in a different way. Actually, oddly enough, as a result of all the work I've done in Armenia, even though it's affected what I do back in Boston in the innovation field. And that is the notion of the future being one of two things: either the result of what you do today, or the destination that dictates what you should do today. Most of the world, most governments, most companies, most academic institutions consider the future unpredictable, unalterable often. This notion of destiny exists. And therefore, you do what you do today and you hope for a good future. Hope is not a good strategy. The alternative approach, which often you see in entrepreneurs who cause transformations or government leaders who cause transformations, is that they have first a precise argument for a particular future, one of many that could be possible, and they actually create buy-in to that with as many different constituencies as possible, including foreign donors and corporations. And then everything they do both informs whether that's a good destination and motivates the sacrifices of today to reach that destination. I learned that through some of the work we did in Armenia. I apply it back to many of our companies. You might find it surprising. And I'm quite confident that where we are today, if we don't deal with the future seriously, not dismissively, and with precision, not with aspiration, our future is condemned to repeat what we've already been doing, and I don't expect a very different result.
But if I may add also one other element, which is, I think, giving us a little bit different perspective. Today we are talking not only about Armenia, like country, and the future of Armenia, where is state playing the crucial role, but also about Armenian world, which is much broader. Talking about the future of Armenian diaspora, Artsakh, and the state, whereas the state have some influence, but not always the same level that they can do in the country level. So why it's a critical what the state will be involved in, critical the state will have a part of its participation of this process. But at the same time, we all recognize this. We will be waiting too long to expect the government will do themselves everything that they can do, and it's not realistic. So I think it's creating some type of the good pressure where people will talk in different language about the future, and not just dreaming, but also saying how you can really achieve some of the goals that you are declaring. I think it's bringing new standards. One of the elements of this research also is bringing some educational and new standards, which don't exist in Armenia. We've been blockaded by not only physical blockade, but also mindset blockade last 30 years. And many of these ideas was never been circulated. We didn't have a culture of discussion. We don't have a culture of debate. We don't have a culture of arguing about different positions. And this is why we are constantly trying to bring this different approach to our society, because we believe it's very critical to talk about future, not only who is bad, who is good, who is whatever, corrupt, who is be treated, but more about what kind of the country we're trying to build and what kind of the nation we're trying to build in the next 30 years. So I think it's critical now, especially at the time after we lost the war.
So you believe it's the high time to reflect upon everything, to move forward? Yeah,
Vache, I'll say honestly, we've been, before 2018, it was okay development. and we couldn't use it at this moment to make really transformational changes in job. In 2018, we got very positive wave of the transformation opportunity. We miss it for different reasons. Now we got very negative attitude for the transfer, which is also very good for transformational changes. I am a strong believer. If we're not using this moment also, it really will be very dangerous for our nation's future.
Well, in order to move forward, I would like to ask our colleague from McKinsey, can you please sum up the macro diagnosis part? What are the main growth engines, targets, and how we can increase productivity to move faster ahead?
First of all, I wanted also to begin with the fact that I'm also very kind to be joining this discussion. Yeah, I think it's really a very important moment for Armenia right now. Yeah, back to your question. Yeah, we really conducted a very detailed analysis on macroeconomic part of Armenia and a little bit wider for the whole region. Yeah, and what we see is that indeed, in the course of the past, I think, decades, yeah, our micro parameters were growing, but at the same rate, more or less same rate as other countries in our region, yeah, this really didn't allow us to make a breakthrough, yes, for Armenia as a country, yeah, and moreover, important thing is that the country's economics was growing using some engines which are obsolete now. Yeah, for example, just one example. Yeah, Armenia has one of the highest share of consumer spending in GDP. Yeah, it was steadily growing over the past years. Yeah, but currently it's higher than 80%. Yeah, and it is the highest number among all the countries in the region. So it means that we are at the border here. So we probably can't grow further using consumer spending. Yeah. Another thing is, for example, household loans. Yeah. We also see that Armenia is higher on this parameter than all the countries in the region also. Yeah. Which means that also this traditional growth engine will not longer work. Yeah. And therefore, we tried to find really another levers, another things where we can base, and Armenia can base its future development. And there are three such things, which we outline in the report. One of them is to focus on export-oriented sectors. Yeah, for example, like IT, like financial tourism industry. Yeah. Second is really improving labor productivity and, most importantly, improving quality of human capital, yeah, through education and some other levers potentially, yeah. And third thing is attracting investments, because one more important thing we see is that the level of investment of Armenia as part of GDP is the lowest, yeah, among our peer countries, yeah, which also if you don't invest, yeah, then you don't have long-term future. Yeah, so I think these are maybe the key things, yeah, and the realization of these levers, yeah, really could lead to improvement of overall country's productivity, yeah, as you've asked, yeah.
I have a question that is methodological from McKinsey and for Ruben and Noubar about the task that was formulated. The pre-revolutionary governments usually strategized at the long term, 10, 12, maximum 15 years. And it was the time they believed they can understand the medium-term growth, not long-term growth, I'm sorry. And the post-revolutionary government had a target of 30 years, 2050, which was targets quite vague and broad, and or other principles than targets. And you have taken both in Armenia 2020 and this part a 20-year horizon. Can you tell why 20 years? Is it if you are doing a little, if horizon is shorter, is it possible to do transformations? What's the case exactly for 20 years?
Actually, why we took 20 years, yeah, the reason was that we wanted to have a relatively long outlook, yeah, and that's why like 4, 5, or 10 years looked a little bit, too short, yeah, because we wanted to see like the global trends, yeah. One of the we'll talk maybe a little bit later, yeah, how we're choosing sectors, yeah. One of the important things is how global trends are developing, yeah, and how they influence and impact our next steps, yeah. And these global trends are happening over not over 5 years, but like more likely over coming decades, yeah. That's why we didn't choose like a relatively short time horizon, yeah, and favored like more longer one. Another thing is that when we were analyzing sectors, yeah, in the report, we identified actually also relatively short-term ambition, yeah. For example, if we have a look on tourism industry, yeah, we try to understand what could be ambition for 20 years and also what could be ambition for like 5 to 10 years horizon, yeah. So this part is also included into this report.
I think, as we said before, for us, the future needs to be converted into a destination. This report, the work that's been done by McKinsey and others over time, is not suggesting a destination. It's suggesting a set of things to consider when formulating a destination, which really is the responsibility of the state. And the discussions that we hope to have within the context of Future Armenian is really to spur input from all sectors, including diaspora, arts, etc., as to what should that destination be. Now, we could set that destination 100 years from now, 50 years from now. We thought 20 years is a period of time where if we just look back today, 20 years, you can know exactly what happened in the last 20 years. It's not such a long period of time. We did that in 2000. We looked back and we said, well, 1980, Armenia was in a completely different situation, and we could see some of the 5-year intervals. So I think there's no right answer to this. We've said for a long, long time that we consider our clients for the work we're doing to be very young children. And 20 years from now, they'll be adults. And who's building the country that they're going to live in? Governments, when they're elected, typically fix the country that they take over. But people who really care about what country you're leaving for your children, that's something that parents do with very, very difficult circumstances and difficult economies. So I would say 20 years is the time when somebody born becomes an adult, and I think that's the opportunity, and that's where 20 years, at least for me, has been a reasonable time frame to think about planning.
Yeah, I don't want to add too much. I say, to be honest, I don't care if it's a 10, 20, or 30, Vache. It's more important about what kind of approach you're using, what kind of data you're using. It's a dreaming or is really serious work. It's a really consolidation of the elite to think about and being responsible for the future of your nation, or just declaration of the whatever goals that you decide yourself, and just because you're state head of the state, or because you're running opposition. I think this is why for us it was also important element to have a long vision about country being one of the three elements of any success of any country's success. Is the three elements: level of the trust in society, which we have a very low, which we try to build the trust, and this is one. Second, how many long-term projects you have in a country. Third, how strong institutional network platform capacity you have. So the three key elements which we try to do it all last 20 years, understanding this is the key elements of making mindset changes. When we did the TATEV project, or we did the United World College in Dilijan, it was very easy comparison, saying people said, why you didn't repair, I don't know, 400 schools by $200 million, you can repair 400 schools in Armenia, which was immediately will be resulted much bigger and better compared to doing something which would 20, 30 years ahead, thinking about future ambassadors of Armenia. But this is what we thought it was critical to bring mindset changes. This is why methodologically, McKinsey, I think we're only one country today that can look back and say, okay, it's a 20 years plan of private sector looking what's happened in a country without being part of the government program. I don't think any other country exists in this. Well, maybe McKinsey can give us, but this was very important also to have an outside view, because now we can see it was not biased, it was not political, it was independent, but very professional, and we said we want to have this view without giving which is good, which is bad. We just said this is the scenarios, and we now can analyze, and I think it's a very good platform to go next level to, because we can look back and say, okay, during these 20 years, what's happened, how it's happened, and why it's happened, and what we are facing today, how well it can be predicted, and if you're talking about next 20 years, how we can do differently, something which will give us better results if we want it.
Thank you. And coming back to Tigran, can you please describe the methodology of choosing sectors? We'll get to sectors themselves, what is priority, etc. later. But it was refreshing for me to see the first time that we are not claiming to become the hub economy of the region. What was the logic that we applied in choosing? We used archetypes, we used this or that. And for example, Singapore experience, how applicable is it to Armenia methodologically?
So yeah, let me start then with how we chosen these sectors. Yeah, what we've done is that we had actually three lenses. Yeah, through which we had a view on all the sectors in Armenian economy. Yeah, and have chosen the ones which development would really bring the most impact, yeah, for economic growth of the country. Yeah. So the first lens, yeah, as we've identified export as one of the key and becoming net exporter as one of the key lever, yeah. So we had a look on export potential of each of the industries, yeah. This is lens number one. Lens number two was we had a look on a very detailed case studies, yeah, on successful small economies, yeah. Singapore was among them, by the way. There was also like countries like Ireland, for example, Hong Kong, Switzerland, and some others, yeah. And we had a look like which industries played the key roles, yeah, for success of these economies. And number three is that we had a look on global trends, yeah, and which industries, yeah, would benefit most from these global trends, yeah, and which industries therefore could be strategic bet for Armenia, yeah, so that like in 5, 10, or 15 or 20 years, with this global trend will make this industry grow faster than average, yeah, and therefore will allow us to grow the GDP. And based on this, yeah, we identified 5 sectors, yeah, which like comply with all these 3 lenses, yeah. These are like IT digital, yeah, healthcare, education, agriculture, and tourism, yeah. 5 sectors, which for each of which we had like a deep dive with detailed analysis of current state of problems, strengths, yeah, and like roadblocks and the enablers needed to maybe ensure further development, yeah. And also a little bit on Singapore experience, yeah. We had, as I've said, we had a detailed look on the case studies, yeah, and like we had a look on maybe 10 small economies. And important thing which we drew from this analysis is that actually each economy, each such successful small economy country used various macro archetypes, yeah, and the one which is chosen by each specific country, yeah, is defined by the country's strengths, yeah, like historical strengths, like industries which might which are the most developed, yeah, and can ensure future growth, and therefore these archetypes then allow for boosting economic development of the country. So this was the overall approach.
May I just say one of the elements I think we used 20 years ago, which I think was very important. I think we have a very interesting, unusual problem. Because we've been a very developed country, we went down from very developed country to the level of very underdeveloped countries, no production, and our productivity went down. Our productivity, when you look at the sectors, we look from 2 criteria. One, we need to increase productivity because today our productivity is 40% compared to Eastern European countries, which means 2.5 times less compared to Eastern European countries. At the same time, we have a 25% official unemployment, or whatever we can talk about, what is the level of unemployment, which means you're increasing your productivity and in the same time your unemployment problem is not solved because you're getting less people who need to be used. That's why one of the challenges when we look around this approach, also the sector was always looking at the productivity unemployment element. And the other point, what you meant about the hub, which we've been debating many times, Vache, in the end, we have not so many choices. People don't understand. It's or we are part of the metropolis, let's not say empire, or we are independent country, which again, one other option, or we are capsule where we have some sponsors support us, or we are hub. Again, in the end, there's not so many options exist for the country like our size when you can be, and because we being ourselves independent, we cannot provide all three elements, security, prosperity, and identity, enough sufficient. Is a question what kind of trade-off we need to do between these three elements. Now, if you are the capsule, you have your plus minus. If you are the hub, you have your plus minus. If you are part of the metropolis, EU or Russia or whatever other empire, it's the other option. And if you want to stay independent yourself, it's the other option which needs to also consider seriously. But of course, Armenia is unfortunately stuck between three big civilization empire like Ottoman Empire, Iran, and Russia, and it's creating a very big challenge to stay yourself without being part of one of his empire, or without and staying and keeping your identity and security and prosperity in a strong enough level to be sure that you can defend everything by yourself. But it's a good question about what is the right choice. We continue to believe it needs to be debated openly and seriously.
Actually, I hope that when you start your series of discussions, the most important thing people will talk about is the trade-offs, and whether they see this trade-off or that trade-off more beneficial or less beneficial, because very often when I have frustration with plans, there are no trade-offs described. It's very good that you are talking about trade-offs, and actually, unless you really address them, there will be some issues that will never get across. Now, let's come to the most optimistic scenario for this report, because you have already said why you are doing this in general. But now, what is the most optimistic scenario of this plan? Do you believe the government will gratefully take it and say, tomorrow I'm starting incorporating this, or they will ignore at their peril? The reason I am asking, because this is just the potential, as you mentioned. In order to do it and to make it happen, there is a lot of work that still has to happen, which means intense dialogue. But as opposed to, say, previous governments, there was at least some type of format of public-private platform that you would talk. Or they may be political clout. Or is this a political statement? Whatever is this, what is the most optimistic scenario that you believe that this will have the most important immediate impact on the country?
Well, you know, it's early to know exactly, but I can tell you that based on a meeting I had yesterday with the newly re-elected Prime Minister, I'm quite encouraged at the seriousness with which he viewed this initiative, the interest he took in learning the 15 directions and have his questions and his team's questions formulated and discussed together, after which he proposed that we would discuss a mechanism by which we could do exactly that, which is to work in some common format with as many constituencies are interested to actually forge partnerships that really do take the future equally seriously than fighting the fires of today. That is encouraging. I'm aware that the former government expended quite some resource to come up with scenarios for 2050. Those were done in rather some isolation. Those were not done in a highly inclusive way, at least not with the diaspora, not with other portions, at least that I'm aware of. But I'm very encouraged. I also think that all of us, the whole world, but especially the Armenian world, realizes that we're in a particular moment in time. We are facing serious crises with COVID, and the effect of COVID is not going to change very quickly, unfortunately, and it will leave a healthcare effect as well as an economic effect. The effect of the war, the uncertainty that followed, the political strife that followed. And so I think this is a period where we need to reunite different segments of our society, whether separated by age, those people who are young versus those people that are old, whether it's the government and the governed, or Artsakh people and Armenia-based people, or the diaspora in Armenia, or the military and the society. All of those divisions could get in the way of us seriously treating the future. And that really requires dialogue and consensus building. I'm quite optimistic, maybe the wrong word, Vache, only because, as you may know, in my regular life, I very often teach and I always lecture, and I think that the mindset of entrepreneurs and people who want to see progress is paranoid optimism. I think I consider myself a paranoid optimist. I'm never overly optimistic and I'm never overly paranoid, because otherwise I'll be depressed. So this toggling between the two. So I would invite people to be optimistic enough to engage in the discussion. But one thing I'll say is, I think we're entering a period where there's more expected of the citizenry than there has been in the past. 3 years ago, we witnessed a popular movement that caused transformations in the country. I think that same popular movement needs to demand a clearer definition of what the future is we're headed to, such that the sacrifices we make today are worth making. Making sacrifices for an uncertain future is very, very hard to have people do. But if they have a certain agreed upon where their voice was heard, so this notion of popular dialogue, and that could include the whole nation, not just the people who are living here, I think is a very, very powerful one. We are quite encouraged. I'm encouraged preliminarily. I won't speak on behalf of the government or the Prime Minister, but I could say that what I perceive is a recognition that if we just keep doing the same thing as we've done in the past and expect a different result, we probably won't get one. And we have to try some new things, and this may be one of them.
I think Noubar said a very important point, which we're not repeating everything that we've been doing before. We're trying to learn from our mistakes. That's why one is element that we're trying to do differently. It's engaging a lot of people to being part of this discussion, not expecting that the government will do it. That's why we have 88,000 people, if I look today, from 97 countries join this Future Armenian movement, and by the way, it's very important to mention from these 88,000 people, vast majority is from Armenia, which is, I mean, we see the big demand. People saying it's not enough for us just to trust and elect somebody, but we want to also know where we're going. Because without knowing where we're going, most people want to leave the country because they don't see the future of their own kids. And this again, coming back the time horizon, we're thinking about today, somebody with a pregnant woman will be a baby, and they say, okay, in 20 years' time, which army my baby will go, which country it will be, what will be the future of the education if I stay here. So without giving this clear vision about engaging people, I think it was clear. And I hope this will be clear not only for us, but for the people who will have power to make the decisions in the government.
Hopefully it will happen, because currently I believe there is one of the important things that you mentioned for that is missing, which is trust. I on that earlier. Currently we are in more polarized mode. If we get over this, we will have that type of dialogue, hopefully. Now, I would like to go into the gist of the report. Actually, what are the top sectors that you believe are growth engines? What should be prioritized? Is there a roadmap for each sector, or what needs to be done? With all of these priorities set, what's next? Now imagine the following. We are on the most optimistic scenario. Government has bought in. Says, okay, we are moving ahead. What is next? Perhaps, Tigran, you can get us there.
On the top sectors, these are the five I mentioned a little bit earlier. These are IT and digital. These are healthcare, education, tourism, and agriculture. Here, important thing to note is that at least two of them, education and healthcare, they play actually dual role. One of them is really contributing to GDP growth, and increasing productivity and so on. And the second role is, if we speak about education, is ensuring growing human capital. That the next generation, of Armenians, are better educated, and are most importantly, receive the education which they will need, for like industries of the future, yeah, which will be like, you know, in 15, 20 years, yeah. Same on healthcare, yeah. One part of the healthcare is you know, contributing to GDP growth. Another one is creating the overall, like, you know, environment in the country as safe and, you know, convenient for citizens. Yeah, this is also a very important part of this industry, yeah, of healthcare. When we if then I move to the second part of your question, yeah, regarding like the where should the government start? Yeah, here I would probably, you know, echo a little bit what Ruben and Noubar already said. Yeah, I believe that the first idea would be to get, you know, some feedback from the people there. Yeah, just you know, what is their view, and start the discussion. Yeah, to initiate the discussion, to have you know, really a very transparent, yeah, and honest discussion with, you know, with stakeholders, yeah, so that you know, all the decisions which are made are really fact-based, yeah, so that everybody understands why, like, you know, this decision is made or that decision is made. I think this is very important, not only for citizens but also for diaspora.
Yeah, I think the good news about this time that we're living, Vache, with because of the memory of the 4,000 boys who died during the war, we cannot anymore hide all these issues and try to be nice and just don't mention some of the challenges. I think it's why the honest and frank discussion where we are becoming much easier, because society in general will accept, despite the polarization, I would say the people demanding frank and open and professional, honest discussion about where we are and what's happening with us, because it's I think it was cold shower. People lost a lot of illusions, a lot of disappointment got because of what's happened. But at the same time, I think it become more realistic to say, okay, if it's happened and I'm in life, what I need to do differently to not repeat the same problem. So I think it's a very good timing for all of us to really look all these numbers, all the goals and everything what we are talking, and more, I think, straightforward and much more open talk about some of the issues which we didn't touch before for different reasons.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add one thing, Vache, to your prior last comment about trust and dialogue. Yeah, trust comes in many forms, and different people mean different things with it. I tend to think that you first have to have confidence to be able to have trust. Trust at the limit causes you not to need confidence, you just trust. But I think confidence is an easier thing to kind of build over time. And I think that goes in both ways. One, confidence in a person in themselves. And then the second is a confidence in other people. And I think both of those are quite weak and weakened here. I think that despite all the self-confidence that's projected, there's a certain doubt about, you know, what's the right thing to do, how do you do it, etc. And then that self-confidence lack projects to other people. It's like, well, not only do I not, but I also don't trust other people and I don't have confidence. So how to build confidence building measures among the different actors, not within the political sphere only, but outside, in business, in diaspora, how to build confidence with certain wins that we can build over time. I think that's what it's going to take to lead to the kind of trust. The other kind of trust is emotional trust. At the limit, it's faith, right? So there's a lot of people in the diaspora that trusted Armenia, trusted the Armenian government. But at the end of the day, that kind of trust turns out can be really shaken by events. I'd rather we try to achieve confidence, and that you can plan for, get some steps. So if we can at least do these things, let's gain some confidence. And by the way, confidence also needed to attract investment, right? Trust. I don't know we're going to ever have trust from a foreign sovereign that wants to make an investment. Confidence. Let's talk about what leads to confidence. So I just think we need to be thoughtful and careful collectively. I know you know this for many years. You've worked in this area, but I just think it's important for the audience to understand. Let's start taking some measures to build confidence in ourselves, as whether you're in government or private, and then in each other.
It's very interesting. I'll just do a little bit diversion in this regard. In the 80s, 90s, two countries really started to grow rapidly, Ireland and New Zealand. In the early 2000s, I met two people who left the countries, and one was a revered academic in Canada, the other was head of department at United States large bank. And I said, okay, why did you leave the countries? I mean, when it was on the rise. They said, who told you? We left the country without perspective. Then I said, okay, then what happened? I said, well, there was an interesting thing that we suddenly realized that we hit the rock bottom and there is no way back. Do you believe that we have this feeling now? Do you believe that we have this understanding in the country that we are in the rock bottom, there is nobody below, nowhere below? This will also help to go forward.
Every one of us will have our own view on this. My view is, it might be surprising to you, we have not hit the rock bottom, but we have realized that a lot of things we assumed were true are not true, and that we should be worried that it can get worse so that we work on making it better. I don't think we should wait till it hits rock bottom. I think it can get worse, and I think unless we act now and act in new ways, not in the same old ways, I will know that we're going in the wrong direction when we do the same things and expect different results. That will be a disaster. We've learned a lot in the last 30 years as a nation. We've learned a lot in the last 30 or 3 weeks or 3 months as a nation. I think we need to not wait for that. And I think the signs that it could get much worse, even though it has become bad, but look, there's a lot of things to feel good about. It's hard now because generally we're in a state of disillusionment, maybe even depression. But the only way out, in my view, is to envision precisely a future that we want to work towards. I really mean this. I know that, for many, many years we've talked about the future and everybody rolls their eyes and says, you can't predict the future, you're dreamers, you're not this and that. Several $100 million of projects later, they tell us, what have you really done in this country? I'm not sure how many more projects we have to do to show that those are not just dreams, they can be real. But now we're at a point where I think either people just absorb themselves with the present and hope that some Messiah helps their children have a better country, or they're going to move. Ask people why they leave. I think they leave because of the current conditions, but they go someplace because they have an expected future in that place that they think is better. If the expected future here is better, that calculation will have to be between a future Armenia and a present France or Los Angeles. That choice right now, the only way, we cannot make Los Angeles look worse, but we can make Armenia look better in the future, precisely. I think that should be a major mandate of the government. To me, an election is a responsibility that the government has to do that. And I think as a government, everybody should demand that popularly from the government and everybody else.
I agree with Noubar. Unfortunately, or fortunately, again, it depends how you look at the situation. We didn't hit the rock bottom. We didn't hit the down of all the crisis, and I think it's a quite dangerous element exists now. What we can face the situation. People say, "Oh, nothing serious happened. Let's repeat and do the same what we did before." And it's quite dangerous because the results will be the same. It will be failure, and we just will pay a higher price. That's why I will prefer that we will talk about what has happened and what was done wrong now, not 2 years of this time.
Okay, thank you. Now, if we come to the strategies again, do you have resources to pursue the strategies for each sector that you have meticulously drawn up from very comprehensive sources, deriving from e-health to e-subsidies in Nigeria examples and all of the great examples that actually do not cost more but actually can improve productivity significantly? Do we have enough resources for this? I don't mean resources, only money. It's people, it's time, it's dedication. There is a very good part in the report which is about delivery. There was one of the English prime ministers' aides who even wrote a book called Deliverology. And it was about all of this. Now, do we have all the resources to make this happen? Or it is not about the resources, it's about mindset. If you have a mindset, you'll get resources. What is your take on this? Tigran, and please, and Noubar.
Maybe before Tigran, you will answer, because I think you will go more the technical answer in this question. I think we're talking about a very interesting situation in Armenia. We're looking at the challenge of getting money for the country to development. We're talking about the big problem of finding the projects to absorb this money. If tomorrow there will be $3 billion, I'm not sure we have a project that can be really do professional and change. The third element is more important in my view, compared to, is that we don't have people who can execute these projects. And the fourth element, we don't have an environment overall, professional and soft and hard power around us, what will allow us to implement this big project. That's why we have all four elements, the challenges. But I think the major challenge, number one, is the people. And I can see the only solution, it's a different model of engagement of diaspora to Armenian reality. I don't see any chance, but without bringing back or inviting Armenians who've never been in Armenia to come and live here by different ways, because we have now Zoom, look like Tigran now sitting in Moscow and talking with us about doing something for Armenia. But really without bringing tens of thousands of people, families, back to Armenia and changing mindset, because this is one of the elements how you change the mindset. You bring the different standards, you bring different attitude, you bring different approach to some of the solutions of the problems. I don't see any chance for us to do some of the changes. That's why we have our resources, only if we can really engage in a different way with the smart and not easy it will be for us, but for everyone, but engaging this pure diaspora and non-diaspora to Armenia and bring absolutely different standards to the society which we've been living the last 30 years.
Really, if we speak about resources, yeah, for us, the key maybe issue is human capital. Yeah, it's like, you know, a bigger problem from our perspective than money, because money you can get if you have like a list of projects and really you have you know, enough talent to implement them. Yeah, and when we speak about people, yeah, I just also wanted to echo what Ruben just said. So we really need to find, as a country, yeah, new way of how to engage diaspora. Yeah, this means like to make people return to Armenia is number one, and number two is there are like lots of Armenians living throughout the world. Yeah, and the question is how we can engage them if they don't want for some reason to return. Yeah, how we can use their talents, their expertise, you know, their resources also, yeah, to make Armenia growing. Yeah. When we speak about mindset, I think this is really about, again, engaging diaspora and how people think about it, about Armenians. Yeah, there's not only people living within the country now, yeah, but all people who are interested and committed to country's success. Yeah. I would also maybe add another important thing, part of resources and mindset is organization of really how this transformation, yeah, or development, how, whatever we name it, yeah, how it is organized. Yeah. Also, yeah, we had a look during our study on how other countries approach similar things. Yeah, and we also had some, some findings there. For example, some of countries really established something like delivery unit, which is focused on this, transformation journey, on managing it, ensuring like how resources are spread so that they are used in, the most effective way. So I think that this is number three, which is also very important.
Thank you. And my last question is, in the document, there is a quite good diagnosis of the current state of affairs in Armenia. And while some of them are coming from straight facts, like comparing growth rates, structural deficiencies, and many other things, there are a lot of expert assessments in there. Now, it is very interesting for me to see what was your participation. Is it all McKinsey panels that they gathered together and said, all the luminaries on this matter come and do it, or you were driving the process and it was your input of, I'm not talking about factuals, I'm talking about assessment of the situation. So could you please tell us what was your guidance of the project? How immediate was their involvement?
Well, I think it is in a way a methodological question, only because kind of McKinsey as a professional firm has its own standards, and I doubt very much, even if we wanted to do things differently, they would have had us do things differently. And having been involved in maybe 30, 40, 50 projects with McKinsey over the last 20 years, many in the context of Armenia and many, many more in the context of 15, 20 of my companies, different groups, but same general methodology. I think that the intervention of the client, if we can call it that, in this case, it was a large group of us within the context of Armenia 2041, who were the initiators of this study, basically provides a general set of directions and questions along the way as facts and gathered and analyses are done. Kind of what is being reported raises additional questions or additional clarifications, which we provide, and ultimately the work that they do and the research that they do, they stand behind as to what the potential and the best practices might be. So I would say that we haven't spoken about this publicly, but certainly I don't think that I would see the outcome as reflecting much of our wishes but we've had certainly the opportunity to make input as to what interests us in terms of what kind of questions. Is it sectors? Is it top priorities, etc.? That would be my answer. I don't know, Ruben.
Let me just clarify. I didn't mean you undermined the integrity of the report. It was not the question, but you formulated the task, and the task is not very broad. Go say what is good for Armenia. You have to be more specific in guiding the task.
Maybe I will add, Vache, what Noubar said, also working with McKinsey the last 25 years, and a lot of partners is my friends, and we're involved in many of our projects personally also. By the way, I want to say thank you to the entire team of McKinsey who did a fantastic job, and their commitment they spent their weekends, and they've been doing this because they believe it was important for their own also purposes. I think it's a three element what you asked the question. First, it was an unusual project for McKinsey because we are not typical client, because we are not the state, and we more said it's was partnership where we work together, saying, okay, what is the point of this? And we have our own part of responsibility, which we took and we did it, but some part of already was our views, and including our book of Crossroad, which we wrote with Nuna Alikian and Noubar and myself. We already was a lot of elements about the future vision with the debates about was it right or wrong. The second element, which was also important, we asked them to look back to 20 years, what was done, and it was already a great job, and it was a different team. By the way, it's also interesting to see the difficulties sometimes to inspire the fantastic corporate legacy to continuity of something which was done 20 years ago, and now it needs to compare what was done. That's why it's an influence they work, definitely. There was an important element of the work that they did recently. And the third element, of course, of situation in what we engaged, not only we put the task not only about Armenia but also Armenian world, which was as broader, and we engage Armenians who work in McKinsey. It's an element of personal elements of something which we also put not only like the professional but also the emotional, and part of the big group of debate. We put a lot of our personal views and personal experiences.
Now, this is a product that somebody else is actually wanting, and you don't have the same access to the government, players, etc. Right. So this is a bit of an odd project.
That's true. But with Noubar doing the last 20 years, 700 projects, we made a lot of odd projects, by the way.
Yeah. Tigran, how did you guys struggle with a client that I describe as a 2-year-old? So since they can't tell you what they want, how did you struggle with that?
I know, just from my side, I just want to say that really this was a very unusual project. As you said, yeah, sometimes really governments working on such direction. But from my perspective, this is a very, this unique setup allowed us to really be, a very like provide outside-in perspective, absolutely independent from any, political environment or whatsoever, to really provide the fact base, provide understanding of what could be the potential, and how, we really see the potential points of growth, for Armenia. And therefore, I think this was, the key, I would say, feature of this work, and that's why it's very different from what normally really governments do, There was no political agenda here, just to really get necessary deep dives and provide necessary fact base based on this.
The only thing I would just add, because Vache said an interesting thing, I'll have to go look up this book, the Deliverology, and I was thinking, what is it that we're talking about both today and over the last 20 years? And I would say, we're talking about futuronomy. And I'm using that version only because, as many people think that futurology is what they're skeptical of, just like astrology. But astronomy is a scientific discipline. And I think if we can find a way to distinguish futurology, predicting, guessing, Nostradamus, from futuronomy, owning, designing, holding accountable and adjusting, that therein is a split between the present and the future that can actually be beneficial. And so we're trying to give that language, we're trying to give that a format for discussion. And I think the government can be among the biggest beneficiaries of such a narrative, at least to try to engage people in. But Ruben.
No, I will go from a little bit different point, what Noubar said, I totally agree. First of all, about one personal, I want to say story in this. It's happened by occasion without planning, but Noubar got his Armenian passport in 2018 in April 23rd. And it was a very symbolic day. It was exactly the day of the revolution. And I got my passport recently because of the what happened in autumn of the 2020. And I think the main message we both did when we make this decision, each of us by it personally, just saying we are really see the importance of caring about our future ourselves, not by somebody will do for us. And I think it's all about what we're trying to do today, and with the future Armenian, with all these materials, with all this debate. We felt last time we couldn't convince people when we did Armenia 2020, this is a project. I will say many people was excited, many people enjoyed what we did. It was a lot of interesting materials, a lot of research. It was a lot of interesting findings, and some people was excited. But overall, people felt that somebody else needs to do it. I think this time, I hope we all recognize it's not anymore we can expect somebody else will do it for us. It's all we need to do together. And I think it's very important this project. It's not just 600 pages of the research. It's a work that can help us to really think differently and make decisions and deliver. And I agree with Noubar. It's a very important point what you mentioned, something which what nobody expected can be done. The same like we did many other projects in Aurora or in Datev and many in University and many others. And second, I want to say, on looking the screen, I think it's an interesting time we're living because next 4 months, it's a window which will give us a very clear picture. Or we all together, the society, including government and political parties, diaspora and Arta, will really come together and will create joint agenda which we'll discuss and agree and see the destination, and we'll try to do something together. Or it will be an old story which will bring us to fail in the next 2 years. And I won't say now, just like we did in our interview in Azotutsun in 23rd of April, we talk about same thing about what is those options was exactly the same. We said, or it will be revolution, which will be a lot of disappointment, or it will be real transformation. I hope this time we will not repeat the same mistake and we will not make disappointment of the people who really believed the leaders. And we need to deliver what we need to deliver for our side, each of us.
Well, The only thing I can do, I urge to release the document as soon as you can, because it's important to start the discussions, debates, ideas, just exactly in the time when government is going to formulate its policies for next years, in order to be very active and participating in the debate.
Thank you. Thank you, Tigran. Thank you again. Please say our thank you to our entire team.
Mr. Afeyan, Mr. Vardanyan, Mr. Saakyan, and Mr. Gabrielyan, thank you all for this discussion. Thank you for watching and continue to follow CivilNet.